Hi, welcome to the first video in our 5-part series designed to help you prepare for the Salesforce Public Sector Solutions Accredited Professional Exam. By the end of the series, you'll have all the information you need to pass the exam with confidence. I'll be sharing my comprehensive revision notes, which combine materials from Partner Learning Camp, Trailhead, and Salesforce documentation. Plus, I'll be sharing my personal exam experience, including some unexpected surprises that I encountered. So during my exam, I faced questions on topics like security, sharing models, business rules engine, and experience cloud, areas that were heavily featured but not thoroughly covered in the Partner Learning Camp or Trailhead. I'll be providing insights on these areas to help you better prepared. This video series will focus on preparation strategies and key focus areas rather than implementation details. If there's enough interest, I might create another series on implementing public sector solutions. Let me know in the comments below if you would like to see that. In this 5-part PSS exam preparation series, we'll first go over the official exam guide to understand the key focus areas, which I've summarized into 4 categories below. I'll briefly cover the surprise topics I've encountered during the exam as well and how to prepare for them. I'll then share the resources I used to prepare for the exam and some study tips, as PSS covers a lot of content. After that, we'll dive into each individual categories in subsequent videos of the series. Throughout these videos, I'll highlight the surprises that I mentioned earlier to help you be better prepared for the exam. So in part 2 of the series, we'll cover PSS processes and key stakeholders. In part 3, we'll cover industry common layers. Part 4 will be based on PSS data models and applications, and part 5 will be on security and best practice. We'll wrap up with a recap to reinforce what we've covered. So let's get started. Exam overview. We'll first go over how to access the official exam guide, and we'll talk about the general exam details and how to register for the AP exam and some of the tips around that. Then we'll do a deep dive into PSS exam objectives and the surprise topics that I mentioned earlier. To get the official exam guide, you need to log into Partner Learning Camp. What you do next is you need to go to the Browse Catalog tab and search for Public Sector Solutions. And select Public Sector Solutions Implementation Readiness. And in here, you should be able to find a button to enroll into this course. If the enroll button isn't available, it might mean that you've already completed the course, like I did. So once enrolled, you'll find this Public Sector Solutions Accredited Professional Exam Guide, which is this one over here. And when you click on view, you'll bring up the latest exam guide for PSS. I'll provide the link for the exam guide in the description below, but please check for updates regularly as the link might change when the exam is updated. So let's now take a quick look at the exam guide. The first thing I want to highlight is the Salesforce release version. So at the time of this video, which is June 2024, the exam is still based on summer 22 release and was updated on 22nd of June 2022. If the exam is updated in the future, I'll create a video to cover the updates. So please let me know in the comments if you are watching this video in the future and there's been any changes to the exam. So coming up with the exam details. The exam is consisted of 50 multiple choice questions. Duration is 75 minutes and the passing score is 70. The fee is $150, which is slightly cheaper than the Salesforce certifications, but the retake fee is not. It's not 75. It's actually the full amount. So what this means is that you'll get about 1.5 minutes per question, and in terms of registration, it's actually done via the Partner Learning Camp under the Credentials tab. And in here, you can search for public sector, and from there, you can go and click register, and it'll bring you to the Examity provider website. So this is slightly different to Web Assessor, which is what you typically use for Salesforce exams. The difference is that it can take a few days to receive your certification, and for me, it took about 5 or 6 days. So one important tip for doing an exam on Examity is that you need to ensure that your partner org that you use to log into Partner Learning Camp is not expired before the exam time, or you won't be able to access the Partner Learning Camp and take your exam. So for me, I had to learn this the hard way. My org actually expired 2 hours before my exam, so I had to pay to rebook it. In terms of prerequisites, there are no prerequisites for this public sector solution AP exam. And we'll go into these recommended training and references later on in the video. Now let's take a look at the exam outline. So the exam is consisted of 3 sections. First section is the product-specific systems knowledge. Second one is around the product configuration. And the third topic is around implementation strategies and best practices. Each of these topics have several subtopics. Now let's move on to my notes, where I've organized this information and added insights to help you understand the exam objectives more clearly. This table over here is created from the exam outline table that's provided from Salesforce. So I've copied each individual objective details and basically pasted over here. And what I've done is that I've highlighted the key points from the objectives to emphasize the main topics. Additionally, I've characterized each objective into one of the 4 key focus areas as mentioned earlier. And now let's go over each objectives in detail, and also we'll discuss the topics that surprised me during the exam, which is the bit that's highlighted in red. So coming up first is the first section here, which is around product-specific systems knowledge, which weighs around 45% of the exam, so quite a big part of the AP exam. First objective here. This one is around documentation and understanding business needs, value, and vision of the customer. So this one is more about PSS processes and project management. For the key area, this falls under the PSS business processes and key stakeholders. Objective number 2, 1.2. This is around licenses and permit. And the focus is really understanding the out-of-the-box functionalities, the licensing and the permission sets to be able to use licenses and permits app in PSS, understanding the data model, understanding the security ensuring for external users. We'll go into each of these topics in a greater detail later on. So for now, we really just focusing on understanding the objectives. And this falls under the PSS data model and applications area. Coming up next, this one is around inspection management. Again, this is about understanding out-of-the-box functionalities, licensing, permission sets, and the data model. Next one, we have grants management. So this is a bit of a special one. In summer 22 release, the grant making is still not on the core PSS package. Instead, the grants management that's talked about here, it's actually a managed package by itself. So it does have a different data model to grant making. So if you are doing study on partner learning camp, you'll notice that the data model is quite different. And for the purpose of the exam, you need to be familiar with the grant management package. And we'll go over this in detail as well. So again, this one is around data model, licensing, permission sets, out-of-the-box functionalities, and the life cycle of grants management. And yeah, all of this are therefore under PSS data model and applications. Next one, we have employee experience. Again, it's around data model, understanding the licensing and permission sets that you need to assign to the users to be able to use this, and also out-of-the-box functionalities. Next one here is business rules engines. This is quite an important one, as you need to understand the decision explainer, the decision matrix, and expression set quite well. During the exam, I was more expecting generic questions, but I actually had some very specific ones. So this is an area that you need to watch out for and prepare to do some hands-on exercises to understand how business rules engine actually work. And this is under the industry common layer part. Next one here, we have intelligent document automation and also the intelligent form reader. So this falls under industry common layer as well. There's actually not a lot of resources on this on the partner learning cap, so you really need to rely on the Salesforce documentation to understand how intelligent document automation works, and also have some hands-on experience as well. Next one here, we have e-signature technologies. So this one is around Adobe Sign, DocuSign, and DocuSign capabilities. Again, this is one of the surprise areas that I encountered during the exam. It goes into quite detailed questions about how DocuSign works and its capabilities. So again, you need to rely on Salesforce documentation for this, as there's not a lot of documentation on partner learning camp. Coming up next, we have reporting analytics. So this one is about Tableau CRM for public sector, and you need to also understand when to use the standard Salesforce reporting capabilities and when to use the Tableau CRM for public sector. And this one is around the data requirements for Tableau CRM, out-of-the-box apps and dashboard, pre-built analytics template, and formula. And this is under the industry common layer. Next one, we have emergency response. And this one here, you also need to understand the data model as well and have general knowledge around Salesforce apps, Salesforce mobile, and volunteer management. And this falls under the PSS data model and applications. Moving on to section 2, which is around product configuration. First one here, we have Omni Studio components. And for this, you need to understand when to use Data Raptor, FlexCard, integration procedure, and OmniScript, and how to enable the OmniScript package, the use case, and also deployment as well. And this section over here is worth about 36% of the exam, so yeah, quite a big chunk as well. I've got a series that's in progress at the moment on Omni Studio. I'll link in the description below as well. They'll help you to understand the Omni Studio component part of the PSS. You don't actually need to know a lot about Omni Studio and how to design each of these. The focus is really on the use case. So I'll link the playlist, but also the specific video you need to watch, which is a quick overview around Omni Studio. They will cover basically the use cases for these 4 tools within Omni Studio. Next one, we have Service Cloud components. So this one is more around Salesforce knowledge and the knowledge articles and the case management. And this comes under the industry common layer. Next one, we have PSS Digital Experience. This one is more around Experience Cloud template and Experience Cloud licensing. So yeah, this is again another surprise topic for me. It goes into specific details as to what Experience Cloud template to use for different scenarios, and also different Experience Cloud licensing for the external users. This one comes under security and best practice. Next one, we have business rules engines. We talked about it in section 1 above, and so yeah, it's around the same topics. And again, you need to know details about how expression set works and some of the elements that you use with an expression set to get the business rules engine working with the decision matrix and tables. Next one, we have an objective around setting up an org for public sector solutions. So this one is around permission set and licenses, which I've covered, which I've basically mentioned in each of the data model and applications related objectives. So this is a bit of a surprise for me as well, because these permission set and licenses are very specific. So it's important to have hands-on exercises and really go over all the permission sets that are associated with public sector in your demo org, trial org, to understand what are the permission sets that are available and what you need to assign to the internal users and external users to be able to use PSS applications. Last one we have for section 2 is action plans. So this one is around the data model, capability, the use case, and also understanding how action plan template works and the difference between action plan template and the action plan itself. Moving to section 3 around best practice and implementation strategies, which is worth about 20% of the exam. So first one here is more of a generic objective around best approach to discover and design the optimal solution. Second one is a generic one as well, just around how to design and document the public sector solutions and the implementation best practice. And both of these I've basically covered down here. Moving to the third one, this one is around how to expand upon the public sector solutions data model. So this one, you really need to understand the data model for these key topics like inspection management, license and permits, grant management, employee experience, and emergency response. And you need to know the key junction objects and also the key PSS standard objects. This is a bit of a surprise for me as well, as some of the exam questions were very specific and asking you about which junction object or standard object you should use given a scenario. Coming up next, this one is about data sharing and role management. This is again another surprise for me as well, as there's a lot of questions about security. This is about sharing set. So basically, sharing set is a sharing setting for external users. We'll go over this into much more detail in later part of this video. And there's questions about compliant data sharing as well, the org-wide default setting for external users, one bit about reCAPTCHA or CAPTCHA, Salesforce Shield, which is made out of platform encryption and event monitoring, and also setup audit trail as well. Moving on, over here we have one about data management strategy and data quality. So this is basically covered over here. And this one we have mapping the business processes, personas, and requirements. So this one is about understanding the project constraints and understanding the project life cycle. And this one is about really designing a solution that's secured and scaled. So this is covered over here as well. So here are the topics under each of the 4 key focus areas. So these have been derived from the objectives in this table over here. So first one here, PSS, business processes and key stakeholders. Underneath it, we have PSS overview and architecture, public sector processes. So this is about intake, assessment, delivery, and monitoring. And we have project management and constraints. Under the key common layer, the focuses are business rules engine, intelligent document automation, e-signature technologies, Tableau, analytics for public sector, Omni Studio, and Action Plan. In terms of the PSS data models and applications, we have license and permit management, inspection management, grants management, employee experience, and emergency management. Security and best practice, permission set and licenses, experience cloud templates, experience cloud licensing, org-wide default sharing, and security tools. So now that we know the key focus areas for this exam, how do you actually study and prepare for this? And this brings us to study resources and tips. So preparing for this exam requires a mix of different resources, and I'll guide you through each of this in detail, explaining how to use them effectively. So let's dive right in. Coming up next, we have technical learning journey. Over here, I have the technical learning journey on partner portal for public sector solutions. You can find link in the description below. So on the left, you'll see a list of prerequisites. it's worth noting that these are actually recommendations only, and it's important to note that these are actually not mandatory. The official guide that I showed earlier is actually considered as the source of truth, and in there it doesn't actually list any prerequisites. And in fact, I passed the exam without having the Service Cloud and Experience Cloud certifications. So speaking of Service Cloud, while it's mentioned here, the exam questions related to Service Cloud tend to be more general, focusing on areas like case management and Salesforce knowledge. I'll again cover these in this video. In terms of Experience Cloud and Omi Studio, there were quite a few questions, but don't worry if you haven't got a lot of experience in these areas. I'll go over these topics as well. With some preparation and hands-on exercises, you'll learn what you need to know to pass this exam. So the recommended learning content is divided into 4 areas: public sector fundamentals, implementation readiness, implementation best practice, and advanced knowledge. Each of the areas includes a mix of Trailhead modules, Trailhead trials, and partner learning camp modules. I recommend going through each of these to gain hands-on experience and implementation knowledge for PSS. So this is actually quite a good starting point if you are new to public sector solutions and want to understand its use cases and gain some practical hands-on experience. However, not all of these topics are actually included in the official guide, so you won't be examined on all of these topics. And one important thing to know is that the technical learning journey also misses some of the topics that are actually in the exam. Therefore, we need to complement this technical journey documentation with Salesforce public sector solutions documentation and data models, which I'll discuss shortly. Coming up next, we have Partner Learning Camp, which is a fantastic resource to learn how to implement public sector solution projects. It covers a lot of topics and content. So to find the public sector solutions resources on Partner Learning Camp, first go to Browse Catalog. And what you want to do here is that you want to search for public sector solutions. And what you want to enroll in is this public sector solutions implementation readiness. I've already done this, so the enroll button isn't over here, but this should be here if you haven't completed this learning resource on Partner Learning Camp. I would highly recommend you going through all the modules in detail and doing all the hands-on exercises. However, for the PSS AP exam, PLC Partner Learning Camp actually misses some of the topics that are mentioned in the exam guide, and I'll go into these in detail shortly. And there are also topics like composable case management and benefit management that were actually not in the official PSS exam guide, and the reason for this is that these two were actually introduced after the summer 22 release. These modules are still quite important to learn for practical implementation, but not for exam revision. Another very important thing to know is that it's important to know the difference between grant making, which is what's being included in this Partner Learning Camp implementation readiness resource, and grant management package, which is a separate package to public sector solutions. The reason for this is that grant making isn't part of the PSS core until Spring 23 release. So prior to this, grant management capabilities were delivered through a grants management managed package. So these two have very different data models, but they work in a very similar way. But for the purpose of the exam, please study the data model for grant management, not grant making, which is included in this resource. So the grant making material in the partner learning camp is still good for the exam, but the data model is different. So you need to learn the grant management managed package data model, not the grant making one. I'll go into this in a bit more detail later in the video, but just remember for now that besides the difference in data model, grant making and grant management is very similar conceptually. Coming up next, we have Trailhead. So Trailhead is great for understanding concepts and gaining practical PSS knowledge. So be sure to complete all of these modules for hands-on experience. Additionally, I highly recommend this Trailmix for industry common layer. I'll put the link in the description below. You don't need to know all of the tools mentioned over here for the exam, but I would still suggest you to have a basic knowledge of each of these tools to understand their application in PSS projects. For exam revision, just focus on the tools that's mentioned in the official exam guide, which I'll cover later in this video. Next, we have Salesforce Public Sector Solutions documentation. If you've taken quite a few Salesforce certification exams, you should know that most exam content comes from Salesforce documentation and help articles. The PSS documentation, I'll put the link in the description below, is no exception. I strongly suggest you to go through all of this in detail. There's a lot of content, but don't worry, I've summarized the important parts for you later in the video, so you only need to focus on the key areas for the exam. But I will still strongly suggest you to go over all of this in detail and play around in the developer org while going through some of this content. This will really help you when it comes to the actual project implementation. Coming up next, we have hands-on PSS developer org. So most of you should already have a partner learning camp account. Since the PSS exam is only available for partners, you can get a trial org through partner learning camp. So if you go to demo org and for the demo type, select ideal public, this will give you a demo org access and you'll be sent via your email. If you don't work for a partner, that's okay as well. You can find the Trailhead org link in the description below and you'll open up this page that will allow you to request for a public sector solutions org. So with this PSS exam, hands-on experience is very important. PSS covers a lot of content, and while you are not expected to know every detail, practical exposure will greatly enhance your understanding. So I'd suggest keeping the trial org on the side while you are going through partner learning camp, Trailhead content, and Salesforce documentation or help articles. This will help you learn PSS more efficiently. Coming up next, we have data model and PSS admin developer guide. So I found having this data model on the side while going through all these study resources to be very helpful. And also while doing hands-on exercises, I also like to have the data model and the developer guide on the side when I play around in the developer org, and whenever I come across a PSS object that I'm not familiar with, the data model and the developer guide really help me with understanding the relationship between various PSS objects. This is quite important because in the PSS exam, there were quite a few questions on specific PSS objects and its use cases, so it's good to get familiarized with this. And this is just one of the examples of what the data model looks like for one of the PSS applications, specifically visits, inspections, and dynamic assessments. I won't go into this in detail for now because I'll do that in later part of the video. What I want to help you with is how do we actually navigate to here and get this resource. So what you do is, again, I'll include a link to this page for the PSS developer guide. This guide covers the key data models that's part of PSS for now. Important thing to know is that some of these are new applications that's been introduced recently. So if these look a bit new to you and you haven't seen this in the exam guide, don't worry, these will not be included in the exam guide in the actual exam. And the social program management is basically the composable case management. It's just been renamed. Down here we have, if we look at one of these, down here we've just got the specific object and its use cases for the fields. So these are quite useful if you don't really know what the standard, what the object is for and its use cases. I often come back to here and look it up. For example, if I take a look at this and I wanted to find out more about the visitor object, what you do is you just come back here and do a search on visitor. Okay, maybe it doesn't have all of them, but you get the point. Maybe let's pick a different one. We'll pick action plan. So come here, look up action plan. So that's the one that we're looking for. So if I want to find out more about the action plan data model, I can kind of look, and it tells you all the fields that are under this object, the type and description properties. So this is a really good resource for the exam and also for the actual implementation as well. Alright, coming up next we have PSS Partner Pocket Guides. Again, I'll include the descriptions, I'll include the link in the description below. So there are actually 2 pocket guides that are really useful for preparation. So these pocket guides are quite useful if you want a quick summary of each application or on the individual tools within Industry Common Layer. So the first pocket guide is this PSS Industry Common Layer pocket guide. Second one is the pocket guide for these pre-built applications. So just come back for a bit on the Industry Common Layer. As you can see over here, it provides functional grouping and also the main features of each component for the Industry Common Layer. So yeah, really useful. It's a bit of like a summary sheet if you would like. And again, it's quite similar for these pre-built applications. Down here, there's additional resources and also summaries about the credentials, the groups they can join. So yeah, really good resource. And my study notes. So I'll be going through my study notes shortly. They are used to study for this exam. It contains everything you need to know to pass the exam. So in summary, my approach to study for Salesforce exams have always been going through Trailhead and all the help articles related to the exam, and have a developer org and data model on the side while going through the Trailhead and the help articles. I found this approach to be quite efficient and also gives me the practical knowledge that I need to not only do well in the exam, but to also implement the actual Salesforce projects. So if I was asked by my client to implement it, I might not know all the exact details, but I'll know where to find resources. So coming back to this exam, the challenge with this PSS accredited professional exam is that there's a lot of information and not knowing where to focus on because there are so many resources, as we see from the technical learning journey, partner learning camp, Trailhead help articles, and also the developer guides and the pocket guides. But don't worry, my notes have summarized all these important topics for you to pass the exam. And that wraps up the first video in our series. In the next video, we'll dive into PSS, business processes and key stakeholders, where we'll cover PSS overview and architecture, public sector processes, and project management and constraints. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps more people discover free Salesforce study resources and motivates me to create more valuable content for our community. That's it. See you in the next video.